History has been proven to be cruel and disturbing, and humans over the years have proven that they can create some of the most cruel and disturbing contraptions to inflict pain and death upon a person. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about 5 medieval torture devices, and some of these are just plain fucked up. Reading about some of these contraptions just gave me pure anxiety and ghost pains. I have this shit ability to be able to put myself in the position of feeling what these things would have been like, and and that's the shit part about being an empath. Hello and welcome back, or welcome to my channel. If you don't know what's going on here, I'm a horror artist and I like to draw what I talk about in the videos. I like scary facts, true crimes, anything to do with the paranormal, aliens, UFOs, conspiracies, any of that good stuff, and I like to draw, so I put all of that into my videos to hopefully bring you a unique experience. Now, all the information that I do put into these videos is heavily researched, and anything consistent across the information that I do research goes into these videos. Now, today's sponsor of this video is none other than me. I have my Etsy stores and my Redbubble stores if you want to support me by purchasing prints. And if you are a creative person and you like to create toys for yourself or for your kids or whatever, I do have an Etsy store where I have horror felt toy patterns, and you can download one of the patterns and you can create your own toys. And I've got horror characters on there from movies. I've got my own creations on there. There's also some other stuff on there as well. There's plushies. Knock yourself out. Now, with that being said, let's get on with the video and let's get on with the drawing. The Brazen Bull, aka the Bronze Bull, was one of the most cruelest and terrifying ways to punish someone to their death. Created by Perillus of Athens in the 6th century BCE, the bronze worker created a life-size bull made from bronze metal with a door on the side so victims could crawl inside. The bronze bull was designed to stand in a public setting to be a spectacle for onlookers to witness someone locked inside the stomach area of the hollow bronze bull, a fire lit underneath the bull where the person is inside, and the bull slowly heats up inside, getting hotter and hotter and eventually cooking the person alive. The agonizing screams of the victim inside would be translated on the outside as an angry bull sound, because Perillus created the bull with an acoustic apparatus that converted the screams to the bull sound. Steam also came out of the nostrils to add to it like the bull was alive. Perillus presented his design to a cruel tyrant, Polaris of Acragas, Sicily, who reigned from 570 to 554 BCE. He was extremely cruel and loved torture, so he requested Perillus make him the bull. Unfortunately, Polaris made Perillus climb into the bull and demonstrate how it worked, but Polaris locked Perillus inside, lit a fire underneath, and cooked the inventor alive in his own design. But karma is a bitch, because allegedly Polaris was executed in the bull too when he was overthrown by Telemachus. Apparently, a victim would only last up to 10 minutes in the bull until they succumbed to the intense heat. Once Polaris's reign was over, the bull was either destroyed or hidden away, as evidence of this contraption was never really found apparently, other than paintings, drawings and writings of the torture device, but replicas of it have been made and displayed in museums. The Scavengers Daughter, aka the Skirvington's Gyve, Iron Shackle or Stalk, was invented by Sir Leonard Skirvington, who was the Lieutenant of the Tower of London in the 1500s at the time of King Henry VIII of England's reign. Even though this device was rarely used, it was not a nice device to be tortured on. The device was an A-frame shaped metal rack, and the head of the victim would be strapped to the high point of the A-frame that was shaped into a loop, and the hands would be tied at the midpoint and legs would be tied at the lower part. Then the contraption would then fold and or compress the body of the victim, pushing the knees into a sitting position, and the head would be in the opposite direction. As the victim was being compressed, this would cause blood to come out of the nose, mouth and ears. Also, cramping in the muscles and difficulty breathing would occur due to the unnatural position of the victims, and spikes were often found where the hinges were that dug into the body to cause even more pain. The device wasn't just used for torture, it was also used to interrogate people for information or a source of intimidation. People who were subjected to the device would suffer from physical and mental trauma, and if used for long periods of time, it would result in death. Edward Arden was an English nobleman who had plans to overthrow Queen Elizabeth I to replace her with Mary, Queen of Scots. In 1583, Edward was arrested for treason. He was interrogated during his trial and placed in the Scavengers Daughter to extract a confession. The Pear of Anguish, aka the choke pear, was a torture device that was created around the 1600s apparently by a robber named Capitaine Paleoli. He used a metal mechanical pear-shaped gag to muffle his victim who was wealthy, so he and his accomplice could rob the home. From there, the device was made into what it is known today, but there really is no definitive account of its first creation. The device was made of metal and had a pear-shaped body with sections on the end that looked long like a curved scoop that would expand and spread apart with a spring or turning the device like a key. The sections that spread apart were inserted into the mouth, vagina or butthole and expanded to torture, tear or mutilate the victim. Some people dispute the device as just being a fruit juicer, but others say it was definitely a torture device. Others even say that it never existed at all. This device was used to extract confessions out of people with the pain of their orifice it was inserted into being more and more excruciating with every turn of the device expanding. You would probably start to feel a pressure as the orifice is forcefully opened, and then splintering pain would start as the skin would start to rip. Jaws would be dislocated and cheeks ripped open. Victims that were subjected to this device were apparently women, as they were accused of being witches, and the pear was used during the Spanish Inquisition. The device caused so much pain that getting a confession that someone was a witch wouldn't usually take long, and it was not designed to kill, just torture. The spikes on the end of the curved scoops were designed to rip into the throat, cervix, or intestines of the victims, and if this did happen, death could potentially follow. The question is, was the Pear of Anguish really used as a torture device? The rat or rat torture was a very barbaric way to torture someone. The first use of rat torture was done by none other than Emperor Nero. He had a thirst for sadism and would place suspected criminals into barrels of rats that had been starved prior and would watch them devour their victims, ripping and eating the flesh of the person. The medieval times really ramped up the rat torture by placing a person flat on a surface and tying them down, placing a metal cage or bucket over the person's stomach with a rat underneath it, and then heating the top of the cage/bucket up with coals placed on top, and the rat would be trapped and would feel the heat creeping down to itself. So the rat would naturally find a way out. Once it realised it couldn't chew through the metal, it would then realise that the floor it was standing on was soft and fleshy, and it would start boring its way downwards. And what's downwards? The person's stomach and internal organs. The rat would eat its way through the person to escape the heat and cause the victim excruciating pain and even death. Other methods would be placing a cage around the head of the person and placing rats inside to torture the victim by having their nose, ears and mouth eaten by the rats. Some torture included cutting the victim open first while they were still alive and placing the rats inside the stomachs. These methods were used to extract information and cause death. Unfortunately, rat torture didn't die out in the olden ages. Rat torture was favoured by South American dictators between the 1960s and 1980s in Chile, Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina. Female prisoners in Chile had tubes fed into their vaginas and rats forced in. The same method was used for the anus. This way of torture was one, if not the most terrifying and horribly excruciating way to be tortured, and its physical and mental torment haunted anyone who came in contact with it. The Catherine wheel, aka the breaking wheel, was first recorded around the 14th century, and there were quite a few variations of using the wheel. Anyone that was a murderer, rapist or robber would be executed by the wheel. The person would be taken to a place that was public and tied to the floor. The wheel was a large wooden multi-spoke device that you would usually typically see on a stagecoach. First stage of the event was to torture, not kill. The executioner would drop the wheel onto arms and legs of the person to break the bones. To aid with this, sometimes sharp-edged timber was placed under the person's arms and legs. Once the excruciating pain was inflicted to the person via breaking bones, the person would be fed through the spokes of the wheel, which was now possible due to the limbs being broken and shattered and flexing in all sorts of directions. They were tied to the wheel and propped up on a pole like a crucifixion. Then the executioner would decapitate the person, and then while still tied to the wheel, they would then be thrown into the fire or left out in the elements for animals and insects to devour. Some people would be left on the wheel alive, and some would survive days with their broken bones. Some people are deliberately kept alive if their crimes were pretty bad, such as murder, and birds would be left to peck at the injuries. If a person was still alive after execution but the wheel failed in some way, such as falls apart or breaks, they would see this as the god's intervention and potential innocence, and the person would be spared and left to recover from their injuries by people trained to treat them. The reason why the breaking wheel was called the Catherine wheel was because Saint Catherine of Alexandria was going to be executed on one of these wheels for refusing to renounce her Christianity beliefs, but the wheel broke, so she ended up being beheaded instead. You were either broken by the wheel or broken on the wheel. Another method of breaking someone on the wheel was to tie them to the wheel, spin them, and the executioner would have a hammer in their hand and periodically break bones where the limbs would hang between the spokes. This device was used all over Europe and parts of Asia. Now, what do you think of these torture devices? Hearing me explain them, did anybody get triggered and experience a little bit of anxiety like I did, and some ghost pains? Because that's what happened to me. I cringed when I read through some of these, and I could just feel the horrible scenarios of these devices, and just I could imagine being stuck in these things, and it was just horrible. And now the illustration that I decided to do for the video today was this image that I got generated from trying to combine all of these particular torture devices into the illustration. The image that I got generated was this like monster creature that has all these like rat tails sticking out of all these holes in the body, so these rats have like burrowed down inside the monster, and there's blood coming out of its mouth. And I put some horns on this creature to represent like the Brazen Bull side, and I've got the Catherine wheel chucked in there, so there's a Catherine wheel attached around its tail, which is dug into the tail and it's bleeding. Then I've got the Scavengers Daughter device, which is compressing this monster as well, so there's a little bit of blood coming out from the side where it's being compressed. And then also the tail of this monster I turned into like the Pear of Anguish, so there's like this creature attached to the tail of the monster that has like this rod that's been inserted down into the head of this thing, and it's come out the bottom, so there's like blood sort of like spraying out from there, and then it's like opening, and this thing is like this thing on the end of this monster's tail is also alive, and it's feeling everything and feeling the torture of this Pear of Anguish sort of going through it, like using this particular tail monster as the device as well. There's a lot of the elements from each one sort of tied into this illustration. Thank God these things don't get used now, because although if they did get used now, you'd probably see a lot of crime rates go down, because I reckon this would scare some people. So hey, maybe let's bring some of these back. That might curb some of the atrocious crimes that happen in this day and age. Hey, I'm all for it. Let me know if you are. But anyway, that is it from me. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. Dislike it, I really couldn't care less, because any interaction you give me puts me up into the algorithm for other people to find me, and hopefully you watch whatever is left of this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.